This episode is going to focus on the accusations that Mary committed adultery and that Jesus was a magician. Shabbat 104b. It was taught in a Berita that Rabbi Eliezer said to the rabbis, "Didn't the infamous Ben Stada take magic spells out of Egypt in a scratch on his flesh? They said to him he was a fool, and you cannot cite proof from a fool." So didn't the infamous Ben-Stada, who's this? This is Jesus, as we'll see. They're saying he took magic spells out of Egypt as a tattoo on his flesh. Okay, he tattooed magic spells on his flesh when he came out of Egypt. And you say, why do they call him Ben-Stada when he was the son of Pandera? Okay, so why are you calling him the son of Stada? We know his real father was named Pandera. Rav Hista said his mother's husband, who acted as his father, was named Stada, but the one who had relations with his mother and fathered him was named Pandera. Okay, so they're saying, yes, his mother's husband was named Stada, but his mother cheated on her husband. She had a lover, and that lover's name was Pandera. Okay, the Gemara asks, wasn't his mother's husband Papos ben Yehuda? So they're saying no, because his mother's husband was not named Stada. He was named Papos ben Yehuda. Rather, his mother was named Stada, and he was named Ben Stada after her. The Gemara asks, but wasn't his mother Miriam who braided women's hair? The Gemara explains that is not a contradiction. Rather, Stada was merely a nickname, as they say. This one strayed from her husband, Setat Da. So it's a pun. Now, what's going on? Essentially, what's going on is they're saying that Jesus, he went to Egypt and he learned magic, and he came out having learned magic. And then they're discussing his name. And the point is, he's called the son of Stada. And the Stada, who is Stada, they explained that's a nickname for Mary. The real name of his mother is Mary, but her nickname is Stada, which has to do with her being an adulteress. That's the accusation, subhanAllah. They're accusing her of doing adultery, so they gave her this nickname Stada that is given to a woman who commits adultery. And they're saying his father, his name was Papos ben Yehuda, but Mary cheated on her husband and had Jesus with someone named Pandera. So that's what's going on. Mary was an adulteress, is the accusation here, and the real father, biological father of Jesus, is named Pandera. That's the accusation. Now, this description given to Mary that she braided women's hair, Peter Schaffer, in his book Jesus and the Talmud, and this is the book I'll be relying on for this series, he translates it as his mother let her women's hair grow long. Now, here is missing from many manuscripts, but it seems to be clear. The meaning is that she used to grow her hair long. Okay. Now, this is an interesting description because it's given by the rabbis, this sort of description to a loose woman, basically, a cheap woman. In Gittin 90a, it says, Rabbi Meyer would say, just as there are different attitudes with regard to food, so too there are different attitudes with regards to women. With regard to food, you have a person who, when a fly falls into his cup, he throws out the wine with the fly and doesn't drink it. And this is comparable to the demeanor of Papos ben Yehuda with regard to his wife, as he would lock the door before his wife and leave so that she would not see any other man. So you have a drink, and a fly falls into it. Some people, they throw the drink away, and they're saying this is similar to Papos ben Yehuda. Who is Papos ben Yehuda? We saw here from this text that he's the husband of Mary, according to the rabbis. So, Papos ben Yehuda, his wife, Mary, she's like a drink which flies enter into. So they're saying that, men committed adultery with her, or a man committed adultery with her. That's the accusation, subhanAllah. And so, Papos ben Yehuda, Mary's husband, responds by locking her away. And he doesn't have intercourse with her anymore. He's done with her, basically. Okay, so we have this accusation. And you have a man who, when a fly falls into a serving bowl, he sucks the fly, and eats the food. He sucks the fly and eats the food. This is the demeanor of a bad man. This is the demeanor of a bad man who sees his wife going out into the streets with her head uncovered and spitting in the marketplace immodestly, and with her garments open from both sides and bathing with men, and ignores it. So notice here that the description of the hair on the head being uncovered is given to a loose woman. Okay, a bad man who sees his wife going out with her head uncovered and spinning in the marketplace. And we saw a similar description given to Mary, that she used to let her women's hair grow long, basically. Similarly, in Erevin 100b, it was taught in the Berita that 3 additional curses are: number 1, she grows her hair long like Lilith, who is a demon. Okay, so having long hair, it's a bad description in the Talmud. It indicates you're a loose woman, and that's the description they give Mary. So they say Mary used to let her hair long. Okay, they say she cheated on her husband with a person named Pandera, and they say that Jesus learned magic from Egypt. Now, you're gonna get Jews and some rabbis who deny that these texts are about Jesus in the Talmud. It's very obvious, though, that they are about Jesus, and the academic position is that they're about Jesus. And throughout the series, we'll see over and over again, it's very clear that these texts are about Jesus. Now, one of the things that makes this very obvious is Selsum. Now, Contra Selsum is a work by Origen who's responding to this individual named Selsum. Okay, so this is before the Babylonian Talmud. And we'll see the same accusations and same tradition here. So Origen mentions that Selsum, he introduces a Jew, and he has the Jew say the following: that Jesus, he invented his birth from a virgin and upbraids him being born in a certain Jewish village of a poor woman of the country, who gained her subsistence by spinning, and who was turned out of doors by her husband, a carpenter by trade, because she was convicted of adultery, that after being driven away by her husband and wandering about for a time, she disgracefully gave birth to Jesus, an illegitimate child, who, having hired himself out as a servant in Egypt on account of his poverty, and having there acquired some miraculous powers on which the Egyptians greatly pride themselves, returned to his own country, highly elated on account of them, and by means of them proclaimed himself a god. Okay, so 3 things here. Number 1, Jesus made up the virgin birth, and his mother Mary actually committed adultery. Number 2, Jesus went to Egypt and acquired miraculous powers, which the Egyptians greatly pride themselves on. Now, in antiquity, Egypt was linked with magic, so obviously the accusation here is Jesus learned magic from Egypt. And finally, when Jesus came out, he proclaimed himself to be a god. He proclaimed himself God. Okay? And notice how that matches in the Talmud, where we had Jesus learning magic from Egypt and coming out, and then, her husband, her mother, Mary, committing adultery. That's the charge. That's the accusation. Now, Selsum continues: when she was pregnant, she was turned out of doors by the carpenter to whom she had been betrothed, as having been guilty of adultery, and that she bore a child to a certain soldier named Panthera. So they give the name of Mary's alleged lover, and it's Panthera, which is an exact match with the Talmud. What did the Talmud say was Mary's Mary's lover's name? The person Mary committed adultery with, according to the Talmud, subhanAllah, what did they say was his name? Pandera. Pandera is his name. And that's exactly what we see in Selsum. They say that the soldier's name was Panthera. And furthermore, if you go to Eusebius, I think this is Eusebius, he says that the Jews accused Jesus of being fathered from a panther. And this translation is also from Peter Schaffer's Jesus in the Talmud. So Eusebius, attesting to this tradition that there was this rumor that Jesus was fathered from a panther. Selsum bearing witness that Jesus' real father's name was Panthera. So obviously, when we see the same tradition in the Talmud, we know that these texts are speaking about Jesus. Now, Peter Schaffer comments, he says, moreover, and more important, the name is not common at all in Hebrew or Aramaic, and this fact alone makes the connection with Celsus's Panthera obvious. Now, what further makes it clear that the son of Pandera really is a reference to Jesus is the fact that he's called Jesus, the son of Pandera. In the Jerusalem Talmud, they give his full name as Jesus, the son of Pandera. Again, here in the name of Jesus, the son of Pantera. Now, you notice that in these traditions, Jesus goes down to Egypt and he learns magic. Now, that is obviously a play and a reformulation and a response to the tradition in the Gospel of Matthew, where in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus goes down to Egypt as a child and he comes out. So they've taken that, the Jews took that, and they spun it. And they said, no, he went to Egypt and he learned magical powers and he came out from there. So this is a clear response to the Gospel of Matthew. Now, on page 98, Peter Schaffer says, explaining the strange name Panthera, Pantera, Pandera, Panteri, and most of its variations from Miriam's lover and Jesus' real father in Greek as well as in rabbinic sources. Where does this come from? The last derivation among all the possibilities that Meyer discusses and that he finds captivating at first glance but nevertheless dismisses is the assumption of an intentional distortion of Parthenos, virgin, to Pantheros, panther. This explanation, first suggested by F. Niche and followed by quite a number of scholars, is indeed more plausible than the etc., etc. So, perhaps this name of his father, Panthera, Pandera, etc., it comes from a corruption of Mary being called Parthenos, virgin. So they took that Parthenos and they corrupted it to Pantheros, panther. Now, the accusation that Jesus learned magic, we also find it in Justin's dialogue with Trypho. But though they saw such works, they asserted it was magical art, for they dared to call him a magician and a deceiver of the people. So we found the same thing in the Talmud. Now, a further tradition where the Jews accuse Jesus, his mother, his righteous mother, of being an adulteress, subhanAllah, is here in Pesikta Rabati. They say, if the son of the prostitute should say to you, there are two gods, say to him, God says, I'm the one, etc. And then again later, if the son of the prostitute says to you, there are two gods. Now, who is the son of the prostitute? It seems to be a reference to Jesus. That's why even the footnote, they say the reference is to Jesus. Where would this idea of the two gods come from? Well, Jesus and the Father are the two gods. And I think Justin says something similar, that Jesus and the Father are the two gods. Don't quote me on that, but I do think he says that. Now, all this is responded to in the Quran. وَبِكُفْرِهِمْ وَقَوْلِهِمْ عَلَى مَرْيَمَ بُهْتَانًا عَظِيمًا. And for their disbelief and their saying against Mary, a great slander. This is speaking about why Allah cursed them and why he's angry with them. And in the story of Jesus' birth in the Quran, it's beautiful. We see فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا. Then she brought him, meaning Jesus. Okay, she brought him to her people. She brought Jesus to her people. Okay, carrying him. And she brought him to her people, carrying him. They said, "O Mary, you've certainly done a thing unprecedented. O sister of Aaron, your father was not a man of evil, nor was your mother unchaste." Now look how Allah exonerates Mary by giving her this miracle. فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد سبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. So she pointed to him. They said, how can we speak to one who is in the cradle, a child? He said, now Jesus speaks as a baby. Indeed, I am the slave of Allah. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. So Mary is exonerated. As for this claim that Jesus was a magician, on the day of judgment, Allah will say, Ya Isa ibn Maryam, O Jesus, son of Mary. And then Jesus is told about the things that Allah favored him with, including miracles. وإذ تخلق من الطين كهيئة الطير بإذني فتنفخ فيها فتكون طيرا بإذني وتبرئ الأكمه والأبرص بإذني وإذ تخرج الموتى بإذني وإذ كففت بني إسرائيل عنك إذ جئتهم بالبينات فقال الذين كفروا منهم إن هذا إلا سحر مبين. And when you designed from clay like the form of a bird with my permission, then you breathed into it and it became a bird with my permission, and you healed the blind and the leper with my permission. And when you brought forth the dead with my permission, and when I restrained the children of Israel from you, when you came to them with clear proofs, and those who disbelieved among them said, this is not but obvious magic. So the Quran, it clears him of the accusation of magic. It clears Mary of the accusation of adultery, and it chastises the Jews for coming up with this accusation. And the Quran, it clarifies also, we know in the Quran, it's clarified that Jesus did not teach people that he's God or that they should worship a Trinity, etc., etc. He taught them to worship the one God alone. And that's it for this stream. Thanks. And we'll have plenty of other episodes on this, inshallah.